Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Patriot Generation. This is the second episode in our one-on-one interview series where we take each patriot and talk to them about what they may be interested in and things that they may specialize in or have a want to talk about on the podcast. Today we have Weston. So Weston, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me back on the podcast, Elijah. I'm ready to dive into some of these topics that we've got written out here, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. So our topic today is kind of like mental health in general, like what we can do to better it, and kind of like misconceptions about it, and what like kind of the lies we're fed about what mental health is and what it isn't. So that's kind of what we're going to be covering today.
Yeah, so I feel like a good way to kind of start that conversation is kind of to just see how that's kind of being handled right now in the public and just every day-to-day life, which first I want to start off with kind of a statistic where you can look at how America is the country that has the largest, by a very large factor, amount of people being diagnosed with mental health. So there's definitely questions that we'll talk about surrounding on why that is, why America and not all these other nations. Is it just not caught in these other nations, or is it something more specific than that? We can get into any specific questions that you have, but I feel like there's definitely, nowadays kind of my stance is, of course, I'm not going to say that mental health that's not a problem. It is a problem, and it is definitely getting worse. But
Really? No kidding.
But I do think that it is definitely getting overdiagnosed, which I think a lot of countries do better in. Although they also do worse things, they probably don't diagnose it enough. So there's a extreme on both ends, and America's really the main country that has decided to go on the extreme of overdiagnosing. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so what's your opinion on people like self-diagnosing and using their mental health diagnoses and problems as just an excuse to kind of do whatever, or even as like a flex on social media? What do you kind of think of all that?
yeah, so we can definitely start with that first question
Right.
about the self-diagnosis. Of course, I do think that that's possible and you can be right with it. I feel like the majority of the time, especially, which kind of leads into your second question, it's kind of, I don't want to say cool, but a lot of people feel like it makes them different, which is kind of good, but it can also definitely be used in a poor way. And I feel like the majority of the self-diagnosis, people that have self-diagnosed themselves, I feel like the majority is probably an extreme overstatement of whatever diagnosis they say they have. And I think it's usually kind of just not really more than an attention grab.
Mm-hmm.
To your second question of using that as an excuse, again, there's an extent to everything. Like, if you have dyslexia or something, of course you can't be expected to perform exactly as well as everybody else in school with reading or whatever it is. But there is, to what you said, there are a lot of people that are using a diagnosis that is probably not very serious as a like, oh, woe is me, feel bad for me, and an excuse to not try as hard. So using that as an excuse, I definitely don't think is good. Everybody should, with a mental health problem, everybody should be, or just something that's not necessarily normal, that's not like your typical thinker or the way they process stuff, should always be working towards that or using it to their advantage. There's tons of really smart people I've known that are like autistic, and they kind of use it to their advantage.
Elon
where they can
Musk,
see things.
for example.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
he's got Asperger's, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, and he uses that to his advantage. Clearly, we see the amount of money this guy has. So I think too many people kind of see it as a weakness. Of course, there are some they do give you a disadvantage in the typical life, but you should be looking more for the how can I improve from this? How can I, if it is a problem, try my best to fix it? Because I know multiple people that have been dyslexic, and with a year of just working, they've completely got it to go away and they can read completely normally now. So not saying that's going to be the case for everybody, but working towards what you want and to better yourself, whether you have a mental type of issue or not, or if you're just normal and just want to try and get smarter, whatever it is, working towards it is always the best idea.
Right. Going back to what you were saying earlier about like people wanting to be different, I've noticed that there's just kind of this aversion with young people today to being normal. That's like a bad thing. I guess you can kind of think like that. It's like nobody wants to be basic or like predictable and stuff. But it seems like everybody's taking it too far. It's like they're so desperate to be different that they take pride in being like, like broken and like.
It's interesting that you bring this up. So yeah. I actually do like this question because it is very interesting. So being normal, I feel like nowadays trying not to be normal might be the smart move with the type of normal that has now been instituted.
The new normal is being extremely not normal. It's being
Correct.
as weird and like, disordered as possible.
But I do see what you're saying where to not be normal, as in to take on whether it's fake diagnoses or say being gay or trans is kind of a big it's a big shock factor to a lot of people. Like coming out, that whole idea is very very attention drawing. So I see what you mean by that, and I feel like it's also a big piece of it is that people don't feel like they have a purpose. And so because they can't find a purpose and they feel empty, they want to just gain attention.
Yeah, and they kind of feel an identity in this like how they dress super weird with all the crazy makeup and hair and colored hair and stuff, or
internally I think that they struggle with just who they are and themselves. And that's why I think everybody should try to read the Bible and go to church and try and get a relationship with God, because that's the only way that you're actually going to find purpose. You can ask so many people. I mean, like Elon Musk had all the money and now he's like sending spaceships places. Like clearly he didn't get satisfied just with the money. So it's like you're never going to reach a point where you're satisfied unless you have, and honestly, I think you can feel way more fulfilled with a relationship with God, but there are going to be tons of times where you don't at all feel fulfilled just because we are simply human. You're never going to be able to be perfect, and that's never going to and you're never going to be able to feel 100% fulfilled 100% of the time, because every human's imperfect, every human makes mistakes. And I think that's, so kind of to what you were saying, that's a big factor that kind of goes into the shock factor. If people don't have a purpose, so they want to gather attention because attention makes them feel good and they see recognized, and they don't feel recognized outside of that, which is sad, but that is kind of just the truth of why a lot of that is happening. Not all of it, but I feel like a lot of it does kind of zero down to that.
Yeah. So in that echelon, what do you think of the effect on like faith on mental health and kind of like that sort of thing?
Good question. Yeah. So there's been, countless testimonies to people just having a lot more of a sense of peace and purpose once they give their lives to Christ, which, of course, if you know about kind of what that is, then that probably makes sense to you. But for those that might not, it's very... it gives you a kind of never-ending purpose. So it's not a purpose you're necessarily going to be able to achieve. It's kind of like... I was having a discussion a few days ago where it was like justification to like become a Christian. Like a lot of Christians have that down, but then the sanctification piece they don't really have down, because that's the whole rest of, and of course there are some that do, but there are a lot of Christians, especially like in America nowadays, where the sanctification piece, which is living out the rest of your life serving God, it's kind of a daunting task, and a lot of people, especially nowadays, are in a comfort zone that they don't want to go out of. And so having that piece of your whole life, like living up to trying your best to be like Christ, gives you a purpose. I'm not saying you're going to feel satisfied 100% of the time, but it gives you a purpose in what your life, like what you're actually supposed to do with your life.
Right. So how do you think that all ties into taking your problems to, either God or like another earthly person?
So, yeah, I think that, because nowadays, a lot of people will go to therapists. A lot of people have therapists. And it's interesting, because you can take your problems to God versus taking your problems to a therapist have some interesting differences. So taking your thoughts or problems to a therapist, it's interesting because a very large percentage of therapists have therapists themselves, which I'm not trying to say that's necessarily
seems like everyone
bad.
These days has a therapist.
I'm not trying to say it's necessarily bad, but taking your problems to somebody that is also dealing with their own problems, it kind of shows you right there that they're not perfect, so they won't be able to give you perfect answers. They won't be able to help you perfectly. There's only one being that can help you perfectly and actually solve all your problems and give you that peace of mind, and that is Christ, and I absolutely believe that. And it really just comes down to you should try bringing your problems to God first, and then second to other people. I personally wouldn't say a therapist. I would say more trusted people. Find some good mentors that you can have in your life that you can just sit down and talk through things with, that have been through what you're going through, or are just older versions of you or something along those lines. Because I feel like therapists, when it's not as personal and more just like factual, they can give you information the wrong way. I mean, again, they're human. They have their own problems. Not saying that they can't help you with yours, but that they won't be able to help you perfectly ever, and they'll make mistakes because they're human, just like every other human. And so it can be good to get stuff off your chest. I would personally recommend doing it with someone more trusted, a mentor, someone that you know. If you know a therapist really well, great. But I would say first to bring those problems to God, pray about it, bring it to. Great if you have a youth group or a small group of peers that you really trust that are also faith-based. All of those are great solutions.
Yeah, something about therapy, I've always been a little bit iffy about it because I've kind of like thought about it some. And therapy is a very like addictive thing and a very like addictive business. Like people can kind of get addicted to just coming to someone and just spilling their guts out to them, and they just keep coming back and keep paying.
Yeah.
It's like the therapist never wants to solve your problems because they want you to keep coming back and keep paying them.
It's kind of like the doctor scenario where if you're sick, then the doctors get paid more. Not saying the doctors want you to be sick, but it's that same conundrum, though.
Yeah.
It is that same conundrum where they do benefit off of your problems, kind of. But I wasn't necessarily going to say this, but now that I think about it, I might as well. There are definitely a lot of people, probably a majority of people, that use therapy sessions as complaining sessions, where they go there to just complain about their life and their problems. And I'm not saying that you can't vent every once in a while, but getting into a habit of complaining about your life versus taking action and spending that hour and a half, however long it is, to actually do something to change what's going on is honestly a big waste of time in a lot of ways. And so now, are there people that need therapy? Absolutely. My mom did counseling for people who wanted to hurt themselves. They were usually older teens. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were adopted teens. Again, nothing about that being bad, but it is difficult to switch the family that you spend with and all that. So there are people like that like absolutely like can sit down with someone and kind of pour out to them. But there's definitely kind of like what we talked about where people will self-diagnose themselves with things where it's like, there's definitely too much. Definitely too much.
And I definitely think there are some therapists out there, obviously not your mom, but like, some liberal therapists and stuff that are really just only there to affirm what you think. And if you're just saying stuff like, misery loves company, right? Like just you're going there to commiserate with someone.
Yeah.
And you're saying all this stuff like, for example, say you're just going there to like complain about like your dad or something, right. and the guy, and say it's like not actually abuse, it's like something that you just are kind of blowing out of proportion, and the therapist, a lot of them are just kind of paid to agree with you and not be like, no, I think you're wrong.
So you're right. We can definitely I'll elaborate on that a little bit. When you take, say, a specific example of a kid gets grounded, say they're like 16, 17 years old, and they go to their therapist, and you're only hearing one side of it. So you're hearing all of the bad things that the parent did and how they shouldn't have gotten that punishment, and then you're right, most of the time a lot of these therapists, which do tend to be more left-leaning, are sitting there saying like, okay, yeah, I'm like helping you. They say they're helping you work through it, but they're not helping you really solve the problem. They're more of teaching you how to cope with it, is more of what therapy is. And that's just not. Yes, there are scenarios where you need to like learn to cope with stuff, of course, very traumatic ones, but there are a ton that it's like, no, you don't need to learn how to cope with it, you need to learn how to fix it. Like, you and your parent that grounded you, like, you guys should talk this out, you should like sit down, you can bring up like how this made you feel or something, which again, all the like made you feel and all that stuff, but there are definitely times where that conversation can absolutely be helpful for, even in this instance, if you were to bring up with that parent like, hey, this is kind of my side of it, and of course it does take two ways to have a good conversation, but if you're willing to come forward first and be like, hey, I want to talk about this, usually, again, not in every single circumstance, but usually the parent or whoever it is will be willing to sit down and have a conversation with you. So that's absolutely good question, Elijah. That yes, there is a lot of people that are more of like helping you cope with it versus actually try to come alongside you and help fix it.
Yeah, very true. So how do personal choices and habits and discipline affect mental health?
Yeah, so the personal choices, those obviously can affect mental health depending on if you go out and party every single day, your mental stability is going to be different from someone that goes out and studies every day. Not saying one is way better than the other, even though one probably is better than the other. They're just different. So to kind of analyze that, you can, for instance, studies have shown that people who make their beds and just do simple tasks every single morning. Again, not saying you have to make your bed every morning, but having certain tasks you do every single morning is good. To start your day off with a disciplined setting is good.
I mean, I can say from experience, specifically making your bed, it's such a small thing, and I'd heard people telling me, like, you need to make your bed every day. It'll change your life. And I was like, that's crazy. That's so stupid. I don't need to do that. And then I did it, and I was like, it absolutely affects your mental health. I mean, having that with a clean room is best, but just making your bed, it changes so much. It seems so small, but try it. It'll change everything in my eyes.
Yeah, because you can't really be disciplined in the areas that really matter if you're not in the ones that don't. Right?
Yeah. There's there's a Bible verse out there. I think I'm paraphrasing here, but like, you know, the Lord will entrust you with a lot if you're able to manage little.
Yes.
And that's like an example of that. It's like making your bed every morning. But
also a good thing for actions to how that can affect mental health is it's shown that working out and physical exercise, whether that's running, whether that's weightlifting, whether that's doing a sport multiple times a week, helps a lot because it releases a certain type of
serotonin.
Yes, correct. It releases serotonin, which it literally, as funny as it sounds, literally just makes you happier and less stressed.
Yeah.
That's literally what it does. It's it's basically like an antidepressant, except you're actually working for it and you're not just taking
and nature. I think
yes.
that can help a lot.
Being outside, absolutely. Like
people
sunlight.
Stay inside for so much and they're just like constantly staring at their screens, and we can have a screen time as a different conversation for another time.
Right.
But getting out in nature, just even if it's just like going outside and like in your backyard and just sitting there with the sun.
Being creative, being able to self-entertain. Those are all great attributes that
sitting there and staring forward and not having something to listen to or watch.
Yeah. And that's very hard, especially for this culture. And I'm not saying it's not a problem for like me myself, but it's a problem.
It's hard for me. I'll admit it.
Yeah, it is difficult because I don't want to say perfected, but we're pretty close to perfecting like a perfect entertainment system to where anything that entertains you, you can look up and watch, and it is entertaining.
Yeah, it's just a limitless anything you could now with AI. Yes, it's pretty crappy, but you can just create something on command that you want to watch.
Once AI gets better, honestly, possibly in the next few months, it's going to become a point where instead of the algorithm sending videos your way that it thinks you like, it'll be creating videos that you like, 5 seconds before you watch it.
I saw a comedy sketch that was like very similar to that. It was like somebody in like watching Netflix and stuff, and all the recommended movies were just like AI generated movies with like the viewer as like the main character, and the other guy in the room was like, "Why are all these movies just having you as the main character?" And it's like AI made them for me. And it's like, do you want to watch a real movie?
That's funny, but at some point that's definitely going to become real to where it's actually entertaining and it's not crappy graphics, and
that's scary.
Well, it is because it's gonna once AI's graphics get better, which they're already very good now, but like once it gets to the point where YouTube and all these other platforms are using them for that purpose, it's going to become a point where it'll perfect the entertainment industry. And
thus we won't really have an entertainment industry.
Yeah, it's going to be mostly social media. It's going to be very interesting because it'll completely cater to what you like. If you like longer videos, it'll give you longer ones. If you like shorter ones, it'll give you shorter ones. If you like comedy ones, it'll find your sense of humor and it'll give you exactly what that is. And it'll be infinite. So it's going to only keep getting harder. Mental health really will only keep going down. there's not really a way to stop that, but there is a way to help it. There's a way to help it. Not necessarily stop, but there's a way to help it. And that's just helping people not self-diagnose themselves with stuff or over-diagnose themselves with things that aren't really that much of a problem, which I think would kind of lead pretty well into how many people are taking pills for ADHD.
Oh, yes.
'Cause that's interesting, because my dad and one of my brothers have both been diagnosed with ADHD, and I feel like there's two very different types of ADHD that are both being treated for by giving people pills, which I'm not for. I mean, it's been proven that more medicine is worse than less medicine.
Right.
That's a proof. Unless, of course, like, you're dying of some illness and it's like an antibiotic or something. Of course, there's exceptions like that. But the truth about the whole ADHD thing is it's interesting, because of course there are people who do actually have ADHD in which their mind does not allow them to actually focus on something for a certain extent of time. And okay, I understand that being treated, okay? But there are so many people that their minds can focus on something. It's not a mental block that's not allowing them to. They can. They're just bored and they don't want to, which makes sense because we're so used now to people scrolling on these social medias where they get to watch 20-second videos.
And it's also just like human nature with kids specifically. If you coop a bunch of like boys into a room where they're just forced to sit there and like listen to like very boring education for like 6 hours a day, of course they're gonna get restless.
They want to play kickball. They want to play football. They don't want to sit there and read. But it's gotten even worse recently, which is why they've been diagnosing so much of it, because now you can scroll and get a 20-second clip of everything that you want to watch.
Just very quick dopamine like that.
Right. And now you want them to go sit in school and read a book. Like, good luck. You know? And they're still feeding these people pills. And like, does it help? Maybe. Is that the problem? No. The problem is that they just don't have that much discipline, because now we live in an age where you don't really need that much discipline. Like,
right.
it's the instant gratification. The delayed gratification is what a lot of this generation is failing in kind of miserably. Is like, there are a lot of people that are still living, especially this generation, living in their parents' basements because they only want instant gratification, not delayed gratification. They don't want to go out and work a job for 5 years so they can get a good promotion and then one day buy a house. They want to
get married, and
they want to sit and scroll. They want to make minimum wage. They don't want to. They want to do the least amount to be able to still survive.
The worst part is that like it's a sad, miserable existence, and they're kind of fine with that.
Yeah, but that's the problem with kind of this whole scrolling and all that stuff, is that it's very, you can really just like kind of forget about everything and go to it, and it's obviously not good because it's really just outside of the real world. It's not real life.
In a similar vein, what about like antidepressants? I've heard a lot of really bad stuff about that.
Yeah, antidepressants. It's interesting because I've talked to a lot of Christians that are very strongly for it, and it's interesting because
why do you think that is?
I think it's very simple. Same thing that a lot of Christians want to say, and I'm not saying social media is not fine, but I'm saying a reason behind a lot of them saying it is fine is just because they enjoy it. And I feel like there's a ton of Christians that are just like, they want to stay in their comfort zone and have Jesus. And it's kind of like the analogy, they're sitting on the fence. They want a little bit of both.
Yeah, and we've all heard the end of that analogy.
Yes.
The devil owns the fence.
Correct. And yeah, he does. And that's one of my favorite analogies. But
it's great. It never gets old.
Yeah. And the problem is that if I have a tough time saying that antidepressants are fine, because I don't think that it's really, I don't think it's really that much that's new. Like, I don't really think it's new. Like, I feel like people have been depressed, since the beginning of time. Like, when people would go to war and then they would hear that their hometown was wiped out and their family was killed, do you think they weren't depressed?
Yeah.
Like, of course they were depressed.
And that's, a real reason to be depressed.
Exactly. They can have the antidepressants. Yeah. Right? But nowadays we're taking it because our friend made a joke that we didn't really like. Yeah. And it's like,
wow. Our forefathers
changed.
should be ashamed.
I mean, honestly though, it's changed so much. The line of when you actually should start taking this stuff has moved to where it's pretty much just normal.
And I'm no expert on this, so everyone should do their own research and stuff, but antidepressants I've heard that are extremely difficult to get off, and they have some bad side effects.
Always do your own research.
Right.
Whatever we say, check it to the Bible. Always. We don't want to
Yes.
say that we're not going to mess up. We are also human. But to what you're saying though, once you take no matter any type of medicine, especially antidepressants, ADHD pills, whatever, if you were to stop taking them, it leaves you way worse than you were beforehand,
Right.
which is a personal reason that I really don't like taking medicine. Even if I've got allergies, I don't like taking a simple Claritin, which again,
That's
nothing
fair.
against people taking
And
Claritin.
Tylenol.
Right. No.
Especially not if you're
That's a
pregnant.
topic
but
right now.
I guess you don't have to
Yeah.
worry about that.
Right.
Like, this is an aside, but I guess if we're on the topic of medicine, you've seen these videos of these women downing Tylenol to stick it to Trump because he
It's
told
so
them
sad
not to.
because it's not even sticking it to Trump. That's
No,
what doesn't make
it's-
sense. It's like it's not affecting him in
Yeah.
any way. And
Yes,
it's,
and the funniest part is that Trump didn't even pass a law saying no Tylenol when you're
Yeah.
pregnant. All he did was recommend it, and the women were like, you know what? I'm just gonna destroy my future children's life just to stick it to Trump, who didn't even tell me to do
it
anything.
really is sad. And even if it won't do that, the fact that with all this stuff surfacing now about what people think it will and clearly their intent is that it will, it's kind of sickening. Like,
Yeah, and Tylenol themselves, the company, recommended that you don't take it
I
while
was going to bring
pregnant.
that up. Tylenol has commented multiple times in this past week saying how they do not recommend taking it while pregnant. And
I'm just lost by how deranged you have to be. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm willing to mess up my future child's life just to have no effect at all.
Yeah.
And to be petty, and out of spite.
Yeah.
That's yeah. But anyway.
Yeah,
this is
this
very
world's
much
interesting.
off
Anyways,
topic.
kind of back to what we were saying about the
Yeah.
antidepressant stuff. Nowadays, I feel like no one really needs it. No one's again, not nobody. There are people, but if we're targeting specifically the U.S., the majority of people, I'd be willing to say over 95% of people are not in a situation where their whole families were just killed. Like, usually, and if they are, there's a good chance that they're not taking antidepressants. Now, of course, there's a good chance they are, but the people that are, really taking these, and the problem is, eventually your body, what I was saying, well, I'll finish this thought. Your body eventually gets used to it, and you have to take more. And eventually you reach a level, which there was someone close to me that did reach this level where they weren't able to take anymore because then it would start being a safety hazard, and so they had to stop taking. They could take the amount they were taking, but it stopped having an effect because their body got used to it, and it I don't want to be too graphic, but their mental health tanked dramatically, very, 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 very bad, and it's so sad to see that people are worsening a problem that. And especially if you start people as kids really young, they're gonna eventually grow accustomed. Their body's gonna grow used to it, and it's not gonna help anymore.
It's gonna become like an addiction, like any other.
Well,
drug.
it is an addiction,
Yeah.
and it's just setting you up for failure. I mean, absolutely an addiction. Feeling better, that's like every drug.
Yeah,
it
that's
really
every
is.
better. Yeah,
It's everybody's excuse for taking drugs. But what I was saying about the Claritin was, again, nothing against anybody that takes Claritin. I have many times. I don't see a problem with that one. But personally, I haven't taken it in a very long time, and I don't plan to, just because I don't like the idea of my body stopping trying to use its own defenses because it gets satisfied with having a Claritin to solve the allergy problems.
Yeah.
And I don't like the idea that it's going to weaken my body because it's being too reliant on medication. And so, again, a Claritin thing, that's like one of the smallest scale examples that I could use. But it's just very simple. It just doesn't feel right to me that my body's gonna start to become accustomed to fully relying on a drug versus its own immunity system. So
yeah. I think the best antidepressant is going out and taking a walk.
I would agree. Being outside again, and then even further from that, running, doing some type of physical exercise. Serotonin.
Get your mind
yes,
off it. Yeah.
Well, not even just that, but you'll feel better after.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just
get out of this enclosed space. Take off your headphones. Stop watching whatever, and go outside, get some fresh air, and exercise.
Touch some grass.
Touch some literally just touch grass.
Literally, yep.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So how does modern culture impact mental health, like social media and stuff like that? I feel like we've already touched on this a little bit, but
yeah, we can kind of give more of a deeper dive into it. It's kind of culture, especially in the U.S., not in other countries, but in the U.S. is pushing it, and there's so many things that are so wrongly kind of done, where they're saying, like, if you feel like your parents are doing something that you don't like, then go to your school, and then they get the law involved in it and stuff. And of course there are times when you should. For instance, abuse, stuff like that. Like, there
Real
are reasons.
abuse.
Right,
Yes.
real abuse. Not getting grounded or having your iPad taken away for 5 days.
Or being told you are a male when you actually are.
Yeah, yes, it's... The problem is that this generation, which is... Okay, well, there's another topic that kind of fits in really well with this, is how does having a set morals in your life affect your mental health?
Yeah.
And I've seen this play out many, 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 many times, where this is one reason that people with a faith usually do better on the mental health side than people without. And that's because you have a set standard of morals and something that you can look back on. And that's really like sanity right there. Because having to sit down and think through every single moral yourself weighs down on you so tough. It's so bad. And there's so many parents out there that are like, oh, you get to do what you want. And it's like, that's not healthy. Because kids should not be making a lot of the decisions that they're making these days. That shouldn't be in their power to make. And it's really putting more pressure on them, even though their intent is less. Like, oh no, but you don't have to do anything. It's like, okay, but then I can do anything. And it just leaves you in this...
Sometimes freedom is like the real cage, you know? Like you're kind of more restricted by complete freedom than you would be with freedom with limits, you know?
Right, and that's why we do have a government, and we have a lot of freedoms, but there are things you can't do. You can't go kill somebody. You can't steal money from somebody. You can't steal anything
in
from
most
somebody.
cities.
Right. But
that's
you can't,
topic
and that's like America, it's great. We have a lot of great freedoms, but there are some regulations that still need to be in base.
Exactly.
And having parents just nowadays have no set of morals, it just leaves the kids so confused. So they don't have... That's even more purposeless. Like, you don't even have a moral standard or code to live up to. Like, that's where that just plays in to where having a set belief system it helps detrimentally with mental health.
Yeah. So we already talked a bit about ADHD meds in particular. But what do you think about just ADHD in general?
Yeah, so, I mean, again, I said my brother and dad have both been diagnosed with it.
Right.
And I have seen them. For instance, my dad got into buying storage units and reselling those for a little bit, kind of as a side hobby. And I have seen him focus for hours at a time on stuff like that. And then he won't focus if he's got to, like, read through a paper for work or something. Again, no slight to him. Just, like... That is diagnosed as ADHD nowadays, and it's like, no, you're just bored. Like, if it's something you enjoy doing, you can focus. And that's like my brother. There's tons of things he enjoys doing. He'll focus 100% more than some other people. But then when it comes down to, like, having to read a book for an hour, and he's distracted 20 of those minutes, like, it makes sense. And they're diagnosing it, though, and which I guess I wouldn't care about, except that they're medicating it. They're diagnosing it, and then they're not, there's multiple, like, videos that you can look up of, like, mentalists and people that really study the mind that will teach you and walk you through how to focus more. And I feel like that should be absolutely the first and only solution to the people who just have a problem focusing. Now, if they can prove that you actually have a mental block where your mental state does not allow you to focus on something for a set amount of time, in that case, you probably could use the medication. But outside of that, which is 99% of people outside of that, like, really you just need to learn how to focus more. And that's, I mean, and I've seen people do it. I've seen people do it every single day. There's not a single of that 99% ADHD person that hasn't focused on something today. Like, it's probably been, they can focus, they can follow along to a movie, great. But they can't follow along to 4 chapters in a book because it's not stimulating. It's not that instant gratification of that dopamine.
Yeah, a lot of these things are trainable, and they don't have to be medicalized, you know?
Again, it's this culture is, I guess this might even be able to be the title of today's episode, which is kind of how the culture is pushing coping versus fixing.
Oh, that's good.
It's it's not teaching you how to actually work through your problems. It's just teaching you how to swallow a pill so that you don't think about the problems.
Yeah.
And we've seen over and over again in history, when people ignore problems, we have revolutions. We have war. Like, not saying it's going to be necessarily that dramatic, although it wouldn't necessarily surprise me.
I mean, we're pretty close.
It's the whole, you should be looking how to fix problems you have, not cope with them.
Very true. And last question here. What do you think are some solutions people should consider to better their mental health? Just some practical stuff, or even more general stuff that like the government could do, and just things that we could do as a society.
So we kind of touched on how coming to Christ at the very bare minimum, having a set moral code. We also talked about exercise. So if we want to touch more on what the government, public, society, all that can have a better effect in that realm. I'm sure I don't have a perfect example, but just taking the diagnoses more seriously.
Right.
Like, this is not like, you can't, every person that walks in that says they have trouble focusing cannot be automatically diagnosed with all this stuff, because the problem is it puts everybody in a victim mindset, and that's a big problem nowadays, is the victim mindset.
Yeah.
And the world is not out to get you. 99% of the time, it's made up in your head. There are times, of course it is, but most of the time, it's made up in your own head.
Yeah, be a victor, not a victim.
I like that. That's good. Yeah, I wish we had more of those right now in the world. But
that would be nice.
But it's like, yeah, and kind of a quick thing on the depression part that kind of ties into you saying victor versus victim is, it's okay to be depressed. But to say that you are a depressed human being is a whole different mindset. To be depressed momentarily, and you're like, okay, a family member passed away, I am depressed, which is just like a deep state of being sad. Like, that's fine. But to say I'm depressed as a fact, like as a part of who you are,
to make it your identity.
Exactly, it's so demeaning, because that mindset, which I don't think is true almost all the time, but say that it was true, how is saying that over and over to yourself ever going to help? Like, people in sports or whatever always say, like, envision yourself doing it. It's because, or like, envision yourself hitting a home run. Envision yourself catching a win-gaming touchdown. And I'm not saying that manifestation is nothing without action, of course. But your mindset, and that's like when people say, like, speaking positively to yourself versus negatively, it affects your go-to emotions. Absolutely. And so when you just live by this mindset that you're a depressed human being, then every time that you're going to resort to an emotion, it's always going to be sad.
Yeah.
When if you say, okay, I'm young, I've got a lot of life to do, we're going to make mistakes, but hey, it's going to be interesting, I'm excited, right? Then your emotion's not going to immediately go to being, oh my gosh, my life is absolutely horrible.
Right.
And
I've always avoided kind of using the word depression when I'm talking about like emotions and stuff. I kind of default to sad or upset and stuff, because
which is a better terminology.
Yeah, like depression just feels like such a very heavy thing to say about that, and I think people just throw it around too lightly, just like they throw around like the term PTSD or trauma and stuff like that.
Right.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share on this topic?
I'm not sure. I just guess if I want people to have like one big takeaway, it's that don't believe that mental health is not a problem, but it is a problem in the sense of where, yes, it's getting worse, but it's also a separate problem, being way overdiagnosed. And there's a ton of people that do not have any mental handicap that are being told that they do, and that puts them in the victim mindset. So be careful what people tell you is wrong with you or different about you, because being different is not always bad. And yeah, just be cautious around that and try and help out other people. Like, don't just look at someone and say, okay, well, you think that you have ADHD, but you're just bored, so obviously you're dumb for not realizing that. Don't approach it like that, but just try and like come alongside them and be like, no, we can work through this. And then I feel like if you really genuinely come alongside someone and try and work through it with them, I feel like eventually they're going to come to the realization that it is not a permanent problem. It's a problem that can be worked through.
All right, so that about wraps it up for this episode of the Patriot Generation. Thanks so much for coming on, Weston.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to hear what Cameron has to say in about 2 weeks' time as he walks us through some theological stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode of the Patriot Generation, and we'll see you next time.